Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wild Digest. I'm Scott, and yeah, it's been a few days. Thought I would give you a little bit of an update on BookTrek because it is the 27th of August as I record this, so there aren't too many days left. And I gotta kind of get this off my chest and wrap things up on this 4-week mission, and we'll see where I'm going to be leaving off. Not as wonderfully as I had originally thought I was going to, but we'll go over all that. So last time I was on, and I think in previous times, I had mentioned that I was reading this, Toward the Night, Strange New Worlds. This is excellent. I only have about 70 pages to go, so once I finish this video, I'll go off and finally wrap it up. If you are a Strange New Worlds fan, I've said it before. I highly recommend this book. The author, James Swallow, has just nailed the essence of every character on that show so well. Mannerisms, asides, the dialogue, everything. It's really, really a terrific representation of my current favorite Star Trek series, for sure. Although Starfleet Academy is coming, and I'm excited about that. But I just love Star Trek. What can I say? But it's great. I'll have it done soon, and then I can roll into September. Now, I had mentioned before that I originally talked about how I was going to do short story September, and then I had to do a change of plans. I'm going to still try to read a few short stories, but we're going to see how that goes. I have a stack of books over here that I've recently acquired. I guess this is a haul in some ways. Um, this particular stack I owe a lot to Bryan over on Bad Taste Books because he helped me put a list together with some options for this upcoming project. Now I can't go into what I'm actually working on, but I mean you'll at least realize there's something adjacent to the books I'm about to show you. But again, I how can I put it? I reached out to Bryan, having seen what he's talked about on his channel periodically and referenced multiple times, and I reached out to him as sort of a master of this particular type of book, and yeah, he was very helpful. So what I have in this stack of a dozen recently acquired books are middle grade pseudo 90s horror. So I have three Goosebumps, and just as an aside, this was one of the ones that Bryan recommended to me, One Day at Horrorland. So I'm excited to read that one. And also, this was one of the three original ones that were first released. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But so that should be kind of fun to see where it all began, so to speak. So I have three Goosebumps books. I have a couple of the Dead Time Stories books. So you're going to be like, hey, wait, these are sort of all those middle grade horror adjacent. They're all, I don't know, copies of one another in a weird way. But they all certainly filled a lot of gaps between publication dates for various lines. And they certainly sold well. A couple of Dead Time Stories. What do I got here? I've got Ghost Night and It Came from the Deep. And then Came from the Deep was another one that Bryan recommended. I have one Bone Chillers. This one is Beware the Shopping Mall. One of the Shivers books, and I was astounded to find that there's like over 30 of these. But this was another one that Bryan recommended, A Ghastly Shade of Green. Apparently it's ghastly. I have a Spine Chillers Mysteries, and this is the first one in that series. And there's at least 10 of them because there are 10 listed in the front of the book. But this is the first one, Dr. Shiver's Carnival. And then rounding out the stack of a dozen, I have four of the Graveyard School books. And I have 1, 2, 3, and 12. So these I'm going to be digesting throughout the month of September and taking copious notes for a project that I cannot talk about at this point. Woo, mysteries. It should be very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it. I have a trip coming up. I'm going to be flying back east on the 7th of next month, visiting some family in my hometown in upstate New York. And then I will be at Comic-Con Erie in Erie, Pennsylvania from the 12th through the 14th. My wife is going to be signing there. I will be running some role-playing games and wandering about aimlessly buying crap. If you're in that area, I would love to hook up and we can talk books or whatever. Um, so that's coming up, and I'll obviously bring a few of these with me to read over that week. So that should be a lot of fun. All right, now one thing I wanted to do, and I just got to bring up a list here, is before BookTrek wraps up, I had promised that I was going to do a quick overview of Star Trek in the role-playing game sphere. And I may have said this in the previous video, but this goes all the way back to the 70s. The very first published Star Trek role-playing game was one called Star Trek Adventure Gaming in the Final Frontier. And this was published by Heritage Models, who produced a tie-in line of miniatures as well for the game. All of these items are pretty collectible. If you want to start collecting Star Trek role-playing games, expect to pay some pretty good money for the core book and also for the minis, though I have seen them pop up from time to time in game auctions at conventions or at game flea markets, or even on pegs at old school role-playing game or gaming stores. So keep an eye out for those. I think they're pretty much you're going to see blister packs with silver and black labeling. So that was Heritage Models, Star Trek Adventure Gaming in the Final Frontier. I don't own a copy, which is why I brought that slide up. Maybe someday I'll try to track one down, but honestly, the cheapest I've ever seen has been about 150 bucks. So I expect to pay some good money for those. You can download copies, but I'm not going to tell you how to do that because that's horrible. Don't pirate crap. Okay, that was 1978. 1982, there was a company called Terra Games, and they released Starfleet Voyages. And you can see by the cover art in this slide that the covers were inspired by a Star Trek movie that was released that same year, which of course was The Wrath of Khan. And what's funny is that I think in the case of Starfleet Voyages, I'm fairly certain, is that it wasn't actually a licensed game. It's possible the Star Trek Heritage Models one was. They may have had some kind of a license, but Starfleet Voyages, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was not. Again, Starfleet Voyages, if you want to get a copy, there are some out there. I think Noble Knight Games currently has one for like $250 or some ridiculous amount of money. It's a box set. I've never actually seen one in person. I've only ever seen images online. So that was 1982. But 1982 was also when FASA was known for in many later years for Shadowrun and BattleTech and what else did they do? And of course the Doctor Who role-playing game. But that's something for another time. They released an officially licensed Star Trek the role-playing game, and which went on to spawn several supplements. I mean, dozens and dozens of supplements and tie-in games and adventures that really expanded the Star Trek universe out. So much so that the rumor is that a lot of internal writers for like Next Generation were actually pulling stuff from this particular role-playing game. So it was pretty influential. But the irony there is that the last two products they released for it were Star Trek Next Generation books, and apparently Paramount was not so thrilled with those, and they pulled the license. So it went bye-bye, but it did last in FASA's hands for many years. And if you ever get any of that stuff, and it's a lot more common than the previous mentioned ones, you will dig them. They're pretty cool. You can get them and it's still a playable game. All right, in '93, which may have been, no, I'm not sure. Might have been '89 when FASA lost the license, but don't quote me on that. But in 1993, and this is going to require a little side story, a company called Task Force Games released a role-playing game set in the Starfleet universe. All right, we're going to jump back in time and we're going to go to a side jaunt here. Task Force Games was the publisher of a miniatures science fiction Star Trek quote unquote war game called Starfleet Battles. And a lot of you may be very familiar with Starfleet Battles. At the very least, you've heard of it if you're a gamer and have been for a very, very long time. When I was a kid, I used to go to a local convention in my hometown, and there would always be people playing Starfleet Battles on large maps. It's a really crunchy, highly detailed science fiction war game that I mean the hardcore players, they'll have binders of rules, and I'm not kidding when I say that. Anyway, so Task Force Games produced Starfleet Battles with a license through Paramount that is kind of a loophole. We're even going to go further back. Back in the 70s, there was a guy named Franz Joseph. Do I have that name correct? Yeah, Franz Joseph. And he approached Gene Roddenberry and said, hey, I loved Star Trek. And this was before the movies or anything like that. He said, could I do a tie-in technical manual that would represent all the stuff we saw in the show? So the ships, the gear, the uniforms, and then he could, he would extrapolate and extend that vision out and start designing his own ships and doing interiors of ships that we never saw and equipment and all sorts of other crazy stuff. Gene Roddenberry loved it. He gave him the rights to do this, and the Starfleet Technical Manual was released. You're going to see this is all going to come back together, I promise. So the Starfleet Technical Manual comes out, and Task Force Games, the people behind Task Force Games, they know that it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to get a license to do Star Trek, but what if they go to the guy who did the Starfleet Technical Manual, because it wasn't actually released originally as a Star Trek Technical Manual, it was released as the Starfleet Technical Manual. And somehow they were able to get this license, which allowed them to create a game based on the Starfleet Technical Manual, the contents of that book, but they could not do anything in the game based on any of the other Paramount licensed stuff. So they could never do anything based on the movies. They could never do anything based on, well, pretty much anything beyond the original series. So they extrapolated that. It went crazy. It's been around for many, many years. They've expanded all of the on-screen races. It still allows Klingons and Romulans and Tholians and the Kzinti, which were a Larry Niven creation, which appeared in Star Trek the Animated Series, and a few other things like that. So that's where Task Force Games comes in, Starfleet Battles, right? Well, they, in 1993, decided, we've got this universe, or access to this universe, we're paying this fee, why don't we do a role-playing game? So they released this one here, which is Prime Directive. And this is the first edition of Prime Directive. A little glare on the book there. My copy's in pretty decent condition, no breaks on the spine or anything like that. And it is a very black and white, very wargamey structured book. It's got some cool illustrations in there. You can see some, Klingons and stuff in there. But they came out with this, the Prime Directive role-playing game. That got expanded. I'm looking to the shelves to my left, and they did like a Federation source book and a GM screen and a couple of modules and an adventure collection, and that was that. And then they were able to do a version that used GURPS. If you're a role-playing game player or fan, you've probably heard of a generic universal role-playing system. I think that's what GURPS stands for, published by Steve Jackson Games, and they released GURPS Prime Directive. And you can see it is no doubt on the cover, it is a Trek-inspired role-playing game. And this is the core rule book. This one's all tabbed up because it was a project I was working on many years ago that never saw the light of day. But but that's what the GURPS edition looked like, and this is the GURPS fourth edition version. There might have been one before this, but I'm not 100% sure. Uh, and then they were on a roll, and they had these other people coming towards them saying, "Hey, I could adapt it to another game system." So they did Prime Directive D20, which was this particular book. You can see an Andorian on the cover there, a couple of humans. Actually, no, I think that's a Vulcan in blue. And then they did, inexplicably, a Prime Directive modern D20 version. So I think that just brought in some of the D20 modern stuff, the weapons and such, and some of the tech that had been created for the short-lived D20 modern rule set that Wizards of the Coast produced. And that line is still alive, very much still alive. I don't have it in my hands right now, but they broke the GURPS Prime Directive books into 2 volumes, and so I have that now, and it's actually the revised edition, and I think that's the last thing that they did. And also for these books, they did a Federation book, a Klingons book, a Romulans book, all sorts of stuff, and they're pretty good. Like, if you have any interest in running D20, which is like basically third edition D&D, or GURPS, you can pick these books up and run what is effectively a Star Trek campaign, but limited within the scope of the Task Force Games Starfleet Battles universe. So that was what Task Force Games did with Prime Directive. So then we jump ahead. Where are we looking here? 1998. Last Unicorn Games comes along, now very much defunct, and they do a Star Trek original series role-playing game, and also a Next Generation role-playing game, and a Deep Space Nine role-playing game. The only one I have is this one here, which is the original series one, and it's a really beautiful book. It's got a really sort of retro style with full color interior. There's the ship, Constitution class schematic. Pretty cool. What else is in here? Worth taking a peek at. There's ships, there's tech, lots and lots and lots of photos from the series, which is nice. So, clearly they had access to the entire original series for this book. And then also, of course, if you get the Next Gen or Deep Space Nine books, they have all the goodies in there as well. So this is the one from Last Unicorn Games. Long out of print, but very nice. It's a very nice game. They did a really, really interesting job with it. Jump ahead after that into 2002, and this Last Unicorn one was 1999. I don't know if I mentioned that, but in 2002, Decipher Games, Decipher Inc., they release a Star Trek role-playing game, which is pretty well supported. They do multiple books, and they also did tie-in collectible card games. And Decipher was an interesting company. They sort of just popped up out of nowhere, as far as I was concerned, and did a Star Trek game. They did a really, really nice Lord of the Rings game. And I'm trying to remember if they did anything else, but quality stuff. Some of it was a little rife with errors. I remember the Lord of the Rings one had a lot of errors, and they did do a revised edition, but then they kind of, went the way of all flesh as well, and vanished into the dust. And it was quite a few years later, because that was 2002 when those came out. I'm not sure how long they held that license. I would guess maybe like 2-3 years tops. But more recently, oh, and I didn't grab the box down, but that's okay. More recently, Modifius Entertainment out of the UK, they released Star Trek Adventures, and this came out in 2017, their first edition. They did a starter set, which I do own, but starter set and core books and loads of supplemental material. They were very, very prolific with their first edition, and they finally revised it in 2024 with this, which is the Star Trek Adventures second edition core rule book. Stupid lighting. I'm trying to get a good shot of that for you. And you can see they're leaning into the Strange New Worlds look about the cover. Cover's really neat, and it's, it shows all the different eras here reflected. And it's because if you look on the back, if you're a Star Trek fan, there's the Guardian of Forever. So it's kind of like an idea of like the Guardian brings all these different characters and different eras together in one book. It's a really cool system. It's D20 based, but you roll multiple D20s in order to get your successes, and it has a momentum pool system where you can basically spend these tokens in order to add additional dice to your roll. It's really, really nice, really elegant. We are currently playing Star Trek Adventures. We more or less just started our campaign. I'm playing a young doctor on board the ship, and it's very cool. So that is a rundown on all of the Star Trek role-playing games that have been released officially. Well, officially, the first couple, like I said, are use air quotes on around those ones. And certainly Prime Directive is its own thing. But if you want to ever play Star Trek role-playing games, you have lots of options out there to choose from. Some of them are cheaper than others. Obviously, Star Trek Adventures is very much still in print. They've just released a brand new book. I think that just came out. I can't remember if it was a technical manual. Oh, I can't remember. But anyway, so there's some cool stuff coming out for Star Trek Adventures. Lots of support for that. You can find actual play videos online if you want to see how the game is played. And there's a lot of enthusiasm behind it. And Modiphius Entertainment is still running strong and releasing some terrific games. So that is it. My quick BookTrek overview of Star Trek role-playing games from start to finish, or to today, and as well as a look at what's effectively going to be the last book I'm sure I read this month, because I'm probably going to roll right into these middle grade books, and we'll see where things go. I'll try to get at least a couple more videos out before I board my plane and head back east. I'm not sure what I'll talk about. Maybe we'll just see where we are in regards to the middle grade stuff. But other than that, that's where things stand. And I just want to once again thank you for actually watching my channel and subscribing and supporting this kind of thing here on BookTube. So until the next video, take care, everyone.